back at the beginning of October, I invited Bev Pegg into the studio to talk about Bev Pegg. Now, with all his experiences, stories and memories, he did not disappoint. We shall hear some of his memories over the next couple of weeks, but first, I asked about his start in music. Your introduction to music was piano lessons, wasn't it, first of all?
Well, that's right, yes. I mean, my parents were sort of opera and Gilbert and Sullivan performers, as it were, and so I'd got the higher class music in my ears all the time from when I was born, and then they got me to take piano lessons when I was about 7 years old. I never really read music very well, and, I could play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and Tchaikovsky's Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, whatever it was, but I didn't really enjoy it that much. And then while I was at school, at Hellings Grammar School, one of the chaps there played a boogie on the piano, and, I said, "What's that?" And they told me it was Winifred Atwell's original version of Five Finger Boogie. And I thought, oh, that's great, I never really got exposed to boogie before. So I bought the sheet music and I learned that in a flash, because it was something I was keen on. And then I started to improvise and pick out songs like When Somebody Thinks You're Wonderful that Fat Swallow played, and even Answer Me that Al McCogan did. Those are the first tunes I sort of picked out on the piano and began to play reasonably well. Yeah. So I first played in my first group. I was actually the pianist, but I wasn't that great, Then a pal of mine bought a guitar, and I didn't know what a guitar was almost, and then because we'd started, the skiffle stuff had started coming out a bit on the radio, and so I was interested in playing the guitar. Like I'd heard a bit of Lonnie Donegan, and some of my mates were playing. So we got together and formed a bit of a skiffle group.
Well, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland.
In fact, my dad bought me a guitar, a cheap guitar, and then I remember going to see the film Loving You with Elvis in, and I saw all the women screaming, and I said, yeah, guitar, that's for me.
That's for me, yes.
Unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet. But
they're still screaming, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So that was the first introduction to music, really. And
you then had a full-time job, but you carried on with the music, didn't you?
Well, yes. I mean, going back a little bit, I mean, when I got to play Five Finger Boogie and started being exposed to pop music, I had a very good friend down the road who I do believe you used to know before he died, sadly, Pete Burks.
Yes, I did.
He started the Crown Felix Big Band.
Yeah.
Now, Pete lived 3 doors away from me, and he was about 80 months older than me. But we were like brothers when we were kids. And, of course, he used to play his elder brother's records, because his elder brother was about 8 or 9 years old, and he was in the army, in the RAF rather. So we used to play his Glenn Miller records. He got a stack of those, and then I used to bring my Spike Jones record, and he bought some, and we used to sort of play that all day long. And then, as I'd mentioned, I went to see High Society, and the film in about 1957. It was over in Stourbridge. I saw it, and with Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly and all that, and Frank Sinatra. And then I was fascinated. That was the first chance I'd ever heard about and watched Louis Armstrong. And I thought, oh, that's great, and they went around all the people in the band. So that was great.
You take a stick with a lick.
We started this skiffle group, which we called the Nomads originally, and then became the Rhythmaires. And we went into the Stanley Dale National Skiffle Contest.
Oh, was there one of those?
Yes, at Aston Hippodrome. Alongside, top of the bill was Jim Dale, who was in the charts with Be My Girl in 1957. And also on the bill were the Vipers Skiffle Group. So, they were. And so it was a big competition,
Just going back to Pete Burks, I noticed you both left school when you were 15.
Yes.
And he used to say you've got one O level between the two of you.
That's right.
Only Bev's got it, I haven't got it.
That's right, yeah. We've only got one O level between the two of us, and Bev's got that.
Which I rather liked.
But there we are. It's all good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and but I mean, at the end of the day, You see, I didn't do any good at school because my grandfather had a chain making works, and just around the war years, it was just going down the nick, and my dad was trying to sell it, and he couldn't right after the war, and he didn't know what to do. So we were really pretty broke, like everybody else after the war, renting a house and all that. But my dad thought, well, the foundry business is one that's possibly going to grow. So he took a gamble, and he hired a couple of chaps, and they built a furnace, and we were lucky, it went from there. And of course, when I was at school, my mum and my dad used to say, well, now, when you're older and you've left school, you come in and run the family business, you see. So while I was at school, I was thinking, I don't need to learn French. What do I want to learn French for, and Latin and all that? I want to, I'm going to work it. So that's it, So you take it off the ball, really, which is probably very demotivational, but there you are, I remember when I went into the family business, I worked in the works, which was no problem at all. But when I was about 23, and my dad said, well, do you think you could run the works? And if you can't, give it 6 months. If you can't, we'll get somebody else in, a manager in, And I said, I'll have a go, Dad, But there's so much business about, you could drop a few clangers and still get by,
So all this time, even though you were in the family business and you were managing it by this time, you were still playing music.
Well, yeah, leading on to that bit is when, from the skiffle to jazz, I remember in one of the competitions, the Carol Levis discoveries at Birmingham Hippodrome, a bit after the skiffle one, there was a couple of chaps in a group, Johnny Neal and the Hound Dogs, who were a rock and roll group, but the two guitarists in there, I heard them in the dressing room playing Lullaby of Birdland, and I thought, I'd love to be able to play that, which I couldn't play, I could only play 3 chords and Chuck Berry stuff, and so I wanted to get a bit better on the guitar. So I had some lessons at Jack Woodruff's in Birmingham by a chap called Pat Moore, who was a dance band guitarist. And I only had about half a dozen lessons with him, but he showed me different, what they call inversions, and where to improvise around, and suddenly everything clicked. Yeah, that's how you do it. And from then on, I just went from there, and then he must have mentioned Django Reinhardt, and he said you ought to listen to him. So I remember buying that 10-inch LP of his with a guitar string on the front, with I'm Confessing and all that.
I got the blues, I feel so lonely. I'd give the world if I could only make you understand. It surely would be grand. I'm gonna telegraph my baby, ask her, won't you please come home? 'Cause when you're gone, I'm all forlorn, I worry all day long. Now baby, won't you please come home? You left your daddy all alone. I have tried in vain, never more to call your name. When you left, you broke my heart. I never thought that we would ever part. Every hour of the day, you can hear me say, baby, won't you please come home to your daddy? Baby, won't you please come home? I never thought that we would ever part. Every hour of the day, you can hear me say, baby, won't you please come home to your daddy? Baby, won't you please come home?
That was Baby, Won't You Please Come Home from Bev Pegg and his Good Time Jazz Gang, which on the 3rd of May 1997, when that was recorded, consisted of Len Thwaites on double bass, Derek Halford on trombone, Tony Caldecott on drums, Gordon Whitworth on trumpet, Bev Pegg on guitar, banjo and vocals, Rick Vaughan playing clarinet, Ken Freeman on piano, Zoltan Sagi playing tenor saxophone. That was the first recording that they made. I mean, it started off as a recording band, and then they found that they had people asking whether they did live stuff as well, and they did. And Bev Pegg and his Good Time Jazz Gang became a fairly regular band. Anyway, 1997 that was. There's more from Bev Pegg in the second hour of tonight's show.